Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining what is actually our very last group advising session of this academic year. I can't believe we're at this place already. I do hope that you were able to get a little bit of rest, enjoy the sunshine last week, wherever you were in the country, outside of the country. My name is Krista, and I'm joined today by Dr. Sanford. We'll introduce ourselves in a bit as well, but this is a group advising session for the Pre-Medical and Pre-Dental Advising Office. So we just ask everyone who's either new to a pre-med or pre-dent track at UConn, new to UConn, to tune into one of these. And at any point after this session, you are welcome to schedule a one-on-one appointment with an advisor if you have more personalized questions. So thank you all for joining us today. And this is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our website as well. And I just want to give a heads up that sometimes when uploading this PowerPoint directly to the slide, the pictures do get a little out of frame for whatever reason. They get a little messed up, but that will be righted in the uploaded slides. Okay, let's begin. So here's our brief agenda for today. We're going to begin by just talking a little bit about who we are, what our office actually does, some other good things to be aware of. And then we're going to dive right into different holistic admissions factors of health professional schools. So all of these things that you want to keep in mind as you move along in your pre-medical or pre-dental journey, including academic metrics, experiential components, the core competencies, as well as a few other resources. So our basic contact info is listed at the bottom here. You can check out our website at premed.uconn.edu, and we have been updating it significantly since December. So you can find all kinds of information about coursework and other application-related processes there. We do have an Instagram account as well, so please follow us there. You can always shoot us an email at premed_predental@uconn.edu. And we are typically located on the 4th floor of the Rowe building on the Storrs campus. It's been about a year out now, though, and we hope to be back there in the fall. But of course, we're open to working with anyone at all campuses. And lastly, this is a shameless picture of my dog from this weekend. This was probably the derpiest photo I've ever gotten of her, and I just wanted to share it with everyone. She enjoyed her walk on campus very much. Okay, so we like to begin these sessions by just orienting you to the fact that the Pre-Medical and Pre-Dental Advising Office is part of the Office of Pre-Professional Advising, which is in turn one of the 6 subunits of the overall Enrichment Programs Department at UConn. So this is a very unique department because we work with all students of all majors, all schools and colleges at UConn, and all UConn campuses to provide opportunities for you to really enrich and enhance your undergraduate education. And so some of our sister units, as you can see here, include the Honors Program, Individualized Major Program, Office of National Scholarships Fellowships, OUR, Office of Undergraduate Research. We'll talk a little bit about them later too, and the University Scholar Program. So we do work very closely with other staff from these units because we're all under the umbrella of the Enrichment Programs Department. And just one fantastic way that you might take advantage of some of the opportunities through us. This is one of our fairly recent alumni, Akshaya, who somehow managed to touch almost every unit within enrichment programs. So she was a STEM scholar in honors. She won a Holster Scholar Grant. She created her own major in health policy and social medicine. So she blended some very interdisciplinary areas to create her own plan of study. She was a health research program participant through OUR. She won some very prestigious scholarships and is currently pursuing a graduate degree in the UK and is a current cycle medical school applicant as well. So again, just one way that you can really make use of some of the unique opportunities that UConn and enrichment programs provides to you. In terms of who we are, so these are some of the names and faces you will see most commonly associated with our office. Begin by just mentioning Erin, and it's fine to call her Erin, is the Director of Pre-Professional Advising. And the others I have listed just alphabetically here. So Emma Beliveau is a recent honors graduate from UConn who's been our behind the scenes wizard for the past 2 years and also engaged in some advising now. Dr. Sanford, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure, thank you, Krista. So I've been with the university for a number of years, at the medical school for many years, doing admissions there, and then with the enrichment programs office for the last 10 years. It's a great privilege to be able to connect and be of service to students as they move along to set and to reach their, professional aspirations. So over the years, I've enjoyed, many, many contacts with many students, both at the undergraduate and medical school. I also love to meet the students through various courses that I get involved in, either coordinating or helping to teach in. So it's a great opportunity to get to know each and every student a little better. So pass it back to the president.
Thank you. So after Dr. Sanford, we have Kalaya Arrington, and she's a PhD candidate in educational psychology with a focus on creativity and social justice in education. She works very closely with our Rose Scholars population of pre-health professional students, as well as doing some pre-medical advising. My name is Krista Rogers. I'm a program coordinator in the department. I also do pre-medical advising and coordinate a lot of our workshops and other extracurricular offerings, such as our Chat with Alumni series. Paris Pruitt is an MA candidate. This is actually her very first day today. I don't even have a photo of her yet, but she was the president actually of the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students when she was an undergraduate at UConn, and we're very excited to have her as part of the team. Sue Ruggiero provides a lot of administrative support to our programs, especially our post-bac program. And finally, Dr. Abbott is our pre-dental advisor for all students at UConn. You may also know him because he regularly teaches Biology 1107. Okay, so again, some of the most common names and faces you'll see, by no means limited though. We are very indebted to Dr. Caroline McGuire as well through enrichment programs. So now for just some basic housekeeping things. We often get the question for anyone new to UConn, new to a pre-medical dental track, what do I have to do to become pre-med or pre-dent at UConn? And the simple answer is there is no application or formal sign up. So there's no official button in PeopleSoft or Student Admin, for example, that you have to check. Really, our official, unofficial way of knowing that you're interested in one of these tracks is to join our emailing list. So if you have not yet already, please email us at premed_predental@uconn.edu. Just say, I would like to be added to the listserv, and we will get you on that right away. We do send out a weekly newsletter during the regular semester, as well as just any other opportunities, events, oftentimes this time of the year especially, job positions actually, clinical or research type things, as well as all of our application cycle related information. So please, please, please make sure you get on that if you have not already. In terms of what our office does, we do spend the bulk of our time advising. And so one thing we want to make sure everyone understands very well is that we work with students their very first day of their freshman year through after graduation. And so you are always welcome as an alumni of UConn to reach back out to us for both general advising and for our applicant support processes. And so actually along these lines, I did already mention our post-bac program. This is a unique program offered through the UConn Graduate School. It's a certificate program, either 1 or 2 years, depending on your track, and is intended for students who either decided a bit later in their undergraduate careers that they wanted to pursue a pre-medical or pre-dental track and need to finish taking the prerequisite coursework requirements, or for some students who might benefit from enhancing their undergraduate GPAs, also adding on some depth in terms of upper division sciences to really enhance their candidacy. So that is one program that we work very closely with the students as well. We offer these group advising sessions at regular points throughout the year, as well as one-on-one appointments. As I mentioned, at any point now after this session, you're welcome to schedule a one-on-one appointment if you do have individualized questions. I'm just going to skip ahead for 1 second here, because to do that, if you're pre-med, you can do that right through our website. Just fill out the relevant appointment request form. And if you're pre-dent, you can schedule your own appointment at nexus.uconn.edu and just search for Dr. Thomas Abbott. And just a heads up, if we do have any pre-dents tuning in today, he only has regular advising hours listed on Nexus for the next 2 weeks. So please do that sooner rather than later. As you can see here too, we are doing all appointments virtually through the end of the semester, likely into the summer as well. But when our office does open back up, please swing by the 4th floor of Road to grab one of our many, many stress balls or pens or highlighters. Okay, the other thing that we spend the bulk of our time doing actually throughout the spring semester is working very closely with applicants who are getting ready to apply each upcoming summer. And so just as an example, this summer, our applicants for the 2022 application cycle will be submitting their applications. So this means anyone who hopes to matriculate to medical or dental school in fall 2022, which means, however, that they're submitting an application in the summer of 2021. And so we work very closely with applicants. We offer a series of workshops throughout the semester, which is always kicked off by a big session known as application orientation. That's typically held the first week of February. And then we have an online portfolio that applicants fill out and begin thinking about their candidacy, writing down some responses in regards to common questions you might see on your primary, secondary applications, and then meeting with advisors in our office for a 45-minute applicant coaching session, we call it. So more information about this is on our website at the link you'll get in the slides uploaded later. But just be aware that we do have some processes in place to work with you when it is your time to apply. And so this is just a list of our typical workshops we offer for upcoming cycle applicants. We have finished the menu for this semester, but all of the recordings are up on our website. And a bit later in the summer as well, we will be offering our typical Navigating the Healthcare Admissions interview workshops as well. I mentioned before, we do have a Chat with Alumni series too. So this is a really great series where we reach back out, or our alumni actually reach out to us and saying we want to get more connected with current students and offering their insights and other areas of specialty. We do have one more event scheduled for this semester. It's actually happening tomorrow at 6 p.m. and it's focused on Black men in medicine. And last week, if you were previously on our emailing list, you know that we were also screening the Black Men in White Coats documentary as well. So please tune in. I know both of these students very well, and it's sure to be a really insightful, thought-provoking discussion. Okay, and now we're getting ready to transition now into holistic admissions. And just to open up this conversation, I do want to dispel a couple common myths and misconceptions about what it means to be pre-med or pre-dent at UConn. So first of all, as you're probably aware, pre-med and pre-dent or pre-law, as the slide says, are not actually majors at UConn. And this is actually very typical at many, many universities because the professional schools would rather have you major in something that you're really intrinsically interested in, something that you can talk about excitedly at a future interview, and something that you're going to excel in. And so as long as you do demonstrate the strength in those hard sciences that are required for admission to health professional schools, you can pair that with whichever major plan of study you would like. We will talk about that a bit more in a couple slides as well. Another common misconception is that if you don't start in your first year, it's too late. And this is not true. We already talked about the post-bac program, and that's just one example of a way that you could, finish taking your prereqs even after you graduate. But it's all about the journey and just cultivating your candidacy and really taking your time to solidify each of those different elements. And so we talk often a lot about too, what do you want to get out of your undergraduate education? You don't want to just make it a series of check boxes that you're trying to achieve. Okay, and lastly, professional school admission is all about GPA and test scores. These are, yes, very important academic metrics. They'll often get you a foot in the door at several programs. But equally, if not more important, are things such as you've demonstrated, you've gathered some clinical experience or engaged in research, you have a strong service record, all of which really point towards your true, genuine interest in medicine and motivation for becoming a healthcare professional. Okay, and so with that, I'm actually going to ask Dr. Sanford now, if he wouldn't mind introducing the concept of holistic admissions at health professional schools, please.
Yeah, so thank you, Krista. The holistic admissions, when you go to any medical admissions website, whether that's allopathic or osteopathic or dental schools or physician assistant training, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, pharmacy, and they're all going to speak about this sort of concept of holistic admission. And that really sort of amounts to they want to know everything about you and they feel it all contributes. So it's just not a numerical game of what your GPA is or whether you have a certain level of achievement on the standardized test score that's required. They do want to see, who you are, or what your life has been like, or where you've decided to put your time and energies, any particular challenges that you may have faced and met, any special interests, talents, unique abilities. One thing I like to say is the schools are interested in interesting people, so this is a time to sort of follow your interests, follow your passions, think of your undergraduate experience and the goals that you've set for yourself during this period of your time and your training in your life. And it all is bigger than just becoming a physician. There are many, many goals folks set for themselves and look to achieve over their whole lives. This is, certainly one that takes time, it takes planning, it takes determination, it takes great care, some sacrifice, and many, many rewards in terms of service to other people. And schools just want to give you very careful attention to everything that is important to you in your life. So we'll stress things like making sure that you engage in service activities to other people. That's one of the key things the schools want to know about, because that's what you're going to be doing in your professional life. And it's going to, at the same time, bring you joy and fulfillment. But the real importance is the ability to give your time and effort and energy to others. And that is the fulfillment in and of itself. So service is a big element that schools look for as they evaluate candidates. They want to, not everybody starts at the same point at the same time and is really measured on the same yardstick, year by year, sort of hour by hour, semester by semester. I mean, they want to just get a sense of the whole experience that you've had and what you've made of it. So this attention to unique challenges you may have faced, unique opportunities you took, to serve others, or things that are very valuable to them. They also want to be sure that you've taken the time and energy and effort to get to be familiar with the role and responsibilities of the profession you hope to join. So they do have some obviously obvious experiential requirements that they'd like to see you do through clinical experience or shadowing. And, just to have fully tested yourself whether this sort of dedication to a service career is really what is most in your heart and in your mind, for your professional life. So holistic admissions is just a sort of way to capture that schools are looking to all dimensions of your own personal development and fulfillment. So we'll pass it back to Krista.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time now diving into each of these three big areas, and we will stop along the way too for some Q&A. So let's begin with academic metrics. Oh, and this is just one more way to kind of visualize holistic admissions. And so you can see that into each person's candidacy, all different factors are taken into account. So those metrics, personal attributes, and experiences. Okay, back to the topic of majors. So we said that, you can major in anything you would like to major in, as long as you're pursuing those prerequisite entrance requirements along the way and demonstrating strength in the hard sciences. And so the schools do want evidence, right, that you're going to be able to handle the rigor of a largely STEM curriculum in medical school, and that you're going to succeed. So we do work with students of all different majors at UConn, different campuses. And if you would like a little more insight, though, we did a little bit of data digging, and the majority of students are pursuing a degree in CLAS, but we've seen rising numbers of students in Connor, the College of Agriculture, Health, and Natural Resources, as well as even engineering in recent semesters. And so, oops, apologies, not sure why this one's bigger. Okay, here we go. And the traditionally popular majors are biological sciences, MCB, and PNB. Those ones do overlap fairly well with the pre-medical and pre-dental requirements, and so they do offer a certain degree of flexibility as well if you hope to pursue either another major or a minor in some other area too. But the second list is just a very small sampling of some of the other majors that our students pursue. Are currently pursuing, in fact, at UConn who are pre-med and pre-dent. And certainly some of them are easier to overlap with the pre-med dent requirements than others. Some of them do take a bit more careful planning just to make sure you're squeezing everything in there. And I would like to just highlight that one called the individualized major. Because if you're not aware, this is one of our sister units, but it's a very unique opportunity at UConn for you to design your own major, your own plan of study, and this can be done as either a standalone major or as a double major with a traditional major. And especially if you have a lot of interdisciplinary interests. For example, they've been receiving a lot of applications from students interested in health-related individualized majors, specifically who want to blend, really STEM areas with social sciences, focusing on health disparities, global health, population health. That's just one of the really exciting and really exploding areas of majors right now. They've also had some really cool ones focused on specific populations of people. So for example, the Latino community in health was the name of one student's major, the Black experience in health. And so really the sky's the limit in terms of what you can design. Okay. And so we will get a little bit into the weeds right now. When it comes down to it, every individual professional school does put out their own entrance requirements. Some of them are very specific in terms of what they're looking for, and they just tell you, we want a year of this, a year of that, a semester of this. Others have taken more of a competency-based approach and might say, we're looking for you to demonstrate skills in this area. We're not going to specify exactly what that means though. And so taking all these things into account, these are the list of courses at UConn that we recommend you take in order to become a really well-rounded, strong applicant, no matter which individual programs you're looking at. You can find this chart. This is taken directly from our website under the coursework page, along with some expanded sections talking about breadth, depth, and rigor. And with that, I'm going to actually turn it back over to Dr. Sanford to talk a little bit about those words. And then also, could you please introduce the common prereqs?
Okay, again, thank you, Krista. So, when you look at sort of the history of medical school admissions, it boils down to, essentially a year of, basic biology or general biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, and general physics. So going back, decades, this has been essentially one of the sort of core course requirements you need to fulfill as you move through. And listed there, you'll see the Bio 107, 108, which is the general bio year. General Chem has a couple of different sequences, and there's also sort of, honors sections and advanced sections. Organic chemistry, there are some options there provided at different schools. The one that we list here is the one that we strongly recommend for you if you're going the sort of medicine and dental route. The Chem 2 443, 444, and 445. These are 2 lectures and an organic chem lab. They're typically done in the second year of your program. Biochemistry is sort of a recent addition in terms of medical school admissions requirements at most schools. There are a couple of different offerings here. You still find some medical schools do not list biochem as a formal prerequisite, but at the medical schools these days, they basically expect you to come in with a foundation in biochemistry. They don't necessarily teach a formal course in that anymore at medical schools. So that's a bit more recent class addition to prerequisite listings. In physics, there's algebra physics or calculus-based physics. There's another physics sequence for students that go into enter in an engineering program. So you just want to sort of follow the routine based upon what's expected in your major and what's expected for your major. Math and statistics, the math requirements vary greatly. It used to be at most medical schools, professional schools, you had to take a year of calculus, and that is still true for many schools. They do want to see a strong quantitative background, and many of you, particularly pursuing, science degrees, are usually required to take a year of calculus anyway, just to get your undergraduate degree in that particular discipline. So you're doing it more to fulfill the requirements of your particular undergraduate major than you're doing as a prerequisite for professional school. Now, that said, there are many schools that, don't necessarily look for that much calculus. So in general, we recommend, even though it might be something you're not required to take, that you try to incorporate at least a semester of calculus as part of your undergraduate experience. Schools paying much more attention these days to statistics. So we also recommend that you incorporate a statistics class, and if possible, even add a second statistics if you can. English, most schools require a full year of English as part of their formal requirements as well. And you'll see some strongly suggested sciences that we recommend in MCB. These are genetics, cell biology, microbiology, in addition to the biochemistry, which is listed above. And a couple of additional new items is psychology and sociology. There is a test component on the MCAT these days, labeled social and behavioral foundations. So the MCAT recommends, and you'll find at many schools, basic recommendation, if not a formal requirement at some schools, to do at least a class in psych and a class in sociology. So that slide very clearly sort of captures, these are the things that should be on your radar screen as you move ahead to get yourself prepared. One, to sort of take the exams, whether that's the DAT or the MCAT, and to really prepare yourself well to be able to apply essentially to any school. As Krista mentioned, the schools have their own sort of schedule of what they allow and what they require. So at some schools, you may find that they only require one semester of physics, or you'll find that some schools don't necessarily specify any specific course requirement and really just talk in terms of they want you to demonstrate these competencies in these subject areas that perhaps you can gain in some other way through work experience or through some summer fellowship immersion or something else. The words listed at the top are really the kind of key things as you think about constructing your overall program goals and what you hope to get out of your undergraduate experience to be really fully prepared to move forward, and are the things that admissions committees of the schools really look at and evaluate. So by breadth, they want to see at least some good mix and sampling of different disciplines that you're interested in, both in science as well as in non-sciences, social sciences, and humanities, and perhaps other things like languages and other sub-disciplines you might be interested in. One thing you quickly realize is you can't take everything. So you do have to start to make some choices about where you want to focus your energies, but they do expect some degree of depth. And when you think about, well, what do you hope to get out of your undergraduate experience, you want to have it so narrow that you really have not had much exposure to other disciplines. So, it deserves some time, attention, and care to give some thought to that word. And as you meet with your academic advisors, you'll find a way to incorporate interests you have in these other disciplines. In terms of depth, often schools, they're looking for areas of interest that you've identified. Once you've been in school, you're having some course experiences, you get excited about one thing or another, and you move on to taking maybe a second class in that particular discipline, whether it's, say, anthropology or music or something. They look for this sort of ignition of interest in a particular area, and then what you've done with that. So if you've gone on to take other classes in more depth in that particular area, that's the sort of thing they will be attentive to and give you some, it will show up as a special interest and credit. And with respect to rigor, have you taken all kind of initial level, intro kind of level classes, or have you gone on to challenge yourself with more 2,000 or 3,000 level courses in the disciplines that you're interested in? Even with respect to some of the prerequisites you see listed here, there are some different sort of rigor options involved that you can exercise as you move along through. But so this is the basic overall course, plan. As you move along with your program, it's a good idea to be checking in on schools that you may be thinking about, just to see that you may meet these. I mean, every school again has a little bit different take on this, but as a general rule, this is a fairly detailed and complete and thorough listing of what the schools, essentially are going to be asking you to complete as you move ahead. So we'll pass it back to Krista.
Thank you for that very comprehensive overview, Dr. Sanford, especially in terms of the breadth, depth, and rigor. So at this point, I'd like to give you all a moment just to digest everything, and please begin dropping any questions you might have in the chat. Just ask that you send them to everyone so that both Dr. Sanford and myself can see them. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Let me clarify, actually. Please ask any questions about academics. We'll get to questions about other things in a bit. Don't be shy. This might be a first.
I think it's the last week of class. People thinking about their finals is what I think. I have a book report due for one of my classes. I think I just got like 30 book reports submitted on my email.
Oh boy, okay. So also first day back after break. Okay, going once, going twice, really? Okay, well, if you do think of a question as we move forward, please drop it in the chat. We will address it. And with that, I do want to make sure we just mention a couple things regarding other kinds of credit you might have brought into UConn. So for example, AP credit and ECE credit, which a lot of Connecticut high schools offer. So Dr. Sanford, could you say a few words about those, please?
Yeah, a main thing to say about this is it differs a little bit by school. So we always have to sort of preface our comments by saying, what one school may allow, another school may not. So it's indeed incumbent on you as an individual applicant eventually to, make sure you're, just aware of whatever stipulations may exist at particular school. A lot of this you really don't know about until the time you're really sort of beginning to narrow down your thinking of where you want to apply. And sometimes you have to backtrack a little bit on some of this. So, but it's just good to be sort of forward thinking. But in general, in our experience, most schools are pretty comfortable with you bringing in AP credit in some areas. So biology, general biology, in general, schools are fine with that. There are a couple of exceptions out there in the medical school community where they really do want you to take their full first year at the college, regardless of whether you brought other stuff in, just because they feel it's, it's their guidepost, to having you progress in the next series of classes at their school. But for many, many schools to bring in AP bio is very common today, particularly with students in the majors in the sciences. And, many schools do a great job with this. Um, the areas where you typically have some issues are with general chemistry and general physics. The professional schools tend to be a little bit more finicky and demanding about what they want taken as formal college credits within the college environment. So you have to be a little bit careful there. Some schools will allow some schools will not allow any, to be brought in essentially as AP for intro to chemistry and intro to physics. If you have brought in some work in these areas, generally speaking, you can go on to do other upper division work and still fulfill the pre-medical requirements of those schools, but it does mean you have to take some additional offerings in those areas. We find this to be true primarily, folks will bring, for example, in intro to, chemistry 1 and 2, and then they'll go on to go right into organic. They'll need to then go on to take some other upper division chemistry with lab. Physics, some will bring in some physics and they'll go on to do physics problems, which is a third level sort of physics class at the school. But it's one of these things you have to be a little protective about, because we don't want you to end up in a situation where you have to, go ahead to fill up your schedule with other more advanced material in a particular area that you may not be, particularly keen on wanting to. And it may be that the rest of your academic schedule really does require you to put more full-time effort into other things. So it's just one of these areas to be, a little questioning about and thoughtful about early in your academic experience, so you don't end up in a situation where you have to go back and backtrack. But in general, schools will take some AP. Generally you have to have a 4 or 5 score. And our suggestion is, when we think about what's likely to be accepted by schools as proof enough, would be, class that's done in your junior and senior year, a subject, SA2 subject exam, 700 or above, whether there was a strong lab related to the high school course that you took in that area, and a score of 4 or 5. And Jill, I would say the only kind of safe ones tend to be calculus and general biology. I think you do have to be a little concerned about general chemistry and physics. There are some prep schools, for example, these days that are even giving organic chemistry classes. So, that is probably not going to count at most of the schools, and would expect you to do organic chemistry as part of your college record. ECE credit is also considered a bit differently by different schools, so it's another area you want to be concerned about. But in general, those grades of classes you've taken as ECE are going to show up on your transcript, and it's going to show up as sort of evidence of completion of essentially the equivalent class, prior to you actually matriculating in the college. So it's just an area of attention and concern that you may need. If you do bring it in, and generally we advise people to bring in ECE credit, if it's at least at the B+ or A- level. The competitions for applying to these professional programs these days, it just seems to climb each and every year. So even a B+ today, may not be as strong a class performance as you want to have incorporated. So it's again a little bit of a question area. You just need to be sort of thoughtful about it. The other thing to say about this is that we're not here as a college to actually have you go back and do something you've already done and done well. We're here as a college and university to challenge you. And you're going to hear from us in general. We'd rather see you go on to do more upper division work and not to have you just take a class over to get an A. We think that's sometimes just not the best use of your time. It's not the best use of your talents, to do so. But it ends up being a, personal judgment that you'll have to make as a candidate as you sort of think through some of this. Making it sound probably a lot more complicated than it is, and really don't mean to do so, other than to, just dialogue about this with your advisors, with the office, and we can just share with you our own experiences and at least point you to the resources, where you can get this basic information. And if you happen to wind up in a situation where you do have to go back to add a class or something in a particular area, it's not the end of the world either, in that, that may require a little bit a different time and attention to a class maybe you weren't thinking of incorporating into your plan, but it may be necessary, in fact, for you to move on. So just a little bit more detail, was intended there to give you a sense of, there are other options for bringing credits into college, but appreciate that, some schools may be a bit, harsher or a bit more finicky about what they'll take, and it may mean that you'll have to go on to take some upper division work. Back to you, Krista.
Thanks. So yes, we often dialogue with students individually about what types of credit they're bringing in, which is best to accept, and that kind of thing. That's just usually easiest done in a one-on-one appointment setting. So please feel free to book an appointment if you have any questions or concerns about that. Okay, lastly, to round off some coursework topics, I did just want to highlight some of the more special offerings that our office is involved with. So in addition to advising and other things, Dr. Sanford does typically teach about 3 courses per semester at the Storrs campus. Every semester, Patient and the Healer is offered. This is a very cool, unique class because it's largely discussion-based. You learn how to take a patient's medical history, conduct an examination. In fact, the final for the course is kind of like a role play where you're the physician conducting the examination. And it's offered typically in the evenings for about 2 hours, 1 night per week. So many pre-health professional students become engaged in this class. It is capped at 60 students per semester. It always does fill up. And so just as a heads up, you might not be able to get into it until you're a bit more of an upperclassman. But we do have a request form for this course right on our website under the same appointment request forms page that opens 1 week prior to whenever course registration opens each semester. So it is a good idea to get that request in as early as possible if you're interested in taking that course. Okay, some of the other courses he teaches in the spring include Intro to Physical Examination, Health of Communities, which has a largely comparative kind of global perspective. And then it's also good to note that UConn does offer an EMT course on campus for credit. So the catalog code is AH4092. It's EMT training, and it's a partnership Allied Health Sciences has with Hartford Hospital. So this is a great option for some students who were planning on becoming certified anyway, and you can receive 4 academic credits for your time. But of course, it is a big time commitment during the semester. So it's usually about 4 hours on Monday and Wednesday evenings, as well as 8 hours on Saturdays. But just to put it on your radar, it does exist. And then lastly, our office does offer an MCAT review course on campus every spring semester. So it is only in the spring, unfortunately. But it is usually spread over about 10 to 11 weeks on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And each week focuses on a different content that's examined on the MCAT. But it's not content review. It assumes you've already taken these classes and is more focused on how that content is actually used on the MCAT and test-taking strategies for that area. Okay, and so we typically begin advertising that every December for the upcoming spring. Okay, lastly, let me check the time. Before we move into the experiential components, which is what I think a lot of you are going to be a little more excited about possibly, let me just ask again if anyone has any questions about academic related things. And I do see a couple that I will respond to privately in the Q&A. Oh, we do have a good question here. Dr. Sanford, would you like to address, do med schools care whether a course is taken during the semester or during the summer? Thank you for that question.
Yes, thank you for the question. In general, our response is you want to try to take the formalized prerequisites as best you can during the regular fall and spring. Schools really feel pedagogically you get a fuller class, more of an opportunity to work with and absorb the material rather than to do it as a very quick summer session course or as an evening class or something like that. That said, there are not a lot of schools that prohibit it in any way. And so if it makes sense in your particular situation to do a course or two in one area in the summer, I don't think that's going to have any real, bearing on application or not. So it's, the answer to the question, it becomes more of an individual sort of thing. What we would advise you to stay away from is just trying to do all your sciences as part of this full summer session class. I think that would raise concerns to admissions committees. So as I think in general, you get your best, fullest overall preparation through the full course in the fall and the spring.
Any other academics questions before we move on? And yes, just to highlight something else in the Q&A. So for any incoming students, advisors will work with incoming students at summer orientation to make sure they're selecting their first semester of courses. And if they're pre-med, they can say that at orientation. The advisors will take that into account. And then moving forward, students will work with whoever their assigned major advisor is, as well as advisors from our office, to make sure they're fulfilling all general education requirements, major requirements, and pre-med or pre-dent requirements. Okay, so I think let's dive now into another aspect of those holistic admissions, the really fun things and the things that will likely demonstrate your real motivation for medicine. So today we're going to loosely break these into three big areas. So clinical experiences, research, independent scholarship, as well as extracurriculars and/or service in general. So let's begin with clinical experiences, or you might also hear us refer to them as medically related experiences. Now, this is important for the schools to see so they know you've really tried out being in a healthcare field and that you're going to be committed to this pathway moving forward. So we like to break clinical experience further into two separate areas, which I think of them as two sides of the same coin. So beginning with shadowing, this is usually the logical place to start if you're a pre-health professional student. And perhaps you already have shadowed a healthcare professional, either a physician or a dentist or someone else. And this, lets you try it out, see if it's a good fit for you, see if you're going to be committed to this. You can observe the doctor-patient interaction and be able to really articulate the role of each healthcare provider as part of the team. And so when you're going about shadowing, usually the easiest way to do this is to utilize any family friend connections you might have in healthcare, ask if anyone would be willing to allow you to shadow, and or reaching out initially to your own pediatrician, dentist, someone you have that established connection with. And typically, once you have a foot in the door somewhere, that can lead to more networking and other opportunities elsewhere. Now, schools don't really put numbers to this. We have found, however, that our most successful applicants each year do average about 50 to 75 hours of shadowing by the time they apply. Ideally, this might also be broken into a few different experiences. So for example, shadowing doctors in 2 to 3 different specialties of medicine, and that gives you some diverse perspectives as well. Now, the flip side of this coin, direct patient care experience, is anything where you're taking more of an active role. So really two big qualifications. You either have this one-on-one interaction with patients and or you're the one administering the healthcare in some form. Okay, I'm just going to say that again. So you either have one-on-one interaction with patients and or you're the one administering the healthcare in some form. And so there's a lot of different avenues you can go about obtaining direct patient care experience. Many students, applicants go a very formalized training route and become certified or licensed in something. An EMT license or a CNA license, certified nursing assistant are two very common options. If you want to build a little extra time into your plans before applying to medical or dental school, perhaps you might use a growth year and pursue something like a medical assistantship or a medical scribe, learning how to document a patient's health history, an ER tech, a physical therapy aide, to list just a couple other examples. Or this might be something you do through a volunteer type position. So if you do volunteer at a hospital or a local clinic or something in the community, a health community center or an elder care facility, and you have that one-on-one patient interaction, maybe you're helping with patient discharge or book cart or mobility clinics, these are all examples of ways to cultivate this direct patient care interaction. We do find that our most successful applicants have minimum 100 hours of this by the time they apply. However, many of them do go well above and beyond that hour requirement. I'm sorry, it's not a requirement. Schools, again, typically don't put hours to this, but they do want significant evidence that you've had some hands-on experience. And again, you know what you're getting into. And so I would mention as well, if we have anyone who's also considering a career as a PA, a physician assistant on the call today, just be aware that they do typically put out minimal requirements, and it's usually in the ballpark anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 hours of direct patient care experience. So that is one big significant difference. Dr. Sanford, what would you like to add about different kinds of clinical experiences and the importance of cultivating those?
Yeah, I think from the admissions committee's perspective at the schools, they just want to be certain that you've had enough exposure and experience and have, tested your interest in as real way as you can. And you really have concluded that this is the environment that you're going to love, that you're going to be dedicated to, that you're can't wait to work the next day, and really not even regard it as work, just view it as your life's calling. A lot of students have a very idealized view of what it's going to be like to be a physician and a healer, and how you're going to spend your days, saving lives and helping everybody. Like any role, responsibility, there's certainly some degree of repetition that, is part of one's role and responsibility. And, it's often not as glamorous as folks, think of it as. So schools want to be as, convinced as they can be that you've sort of had enough experience and enough exposure to have a realistic view of what is going to be necessary for you, to cultivate as strengths and interests to be successful in your role. So I think that's why the schools really look toward holistic admissions, and it's why they come to expect a certain degree of our expectation related to shadowing, related to direct clinical experience, related to evidence of dedication to service in one way or another. So it's it's among those dominant themes as you look at what schools do and how they do it in selecting people to sort of move on to professional schools in healthcare.
Now, just to throw out one example of how you might also cultivate some clinical experience, there is a fairly new program, it's a little over a year now, called the Yukon Health Leaders Program. And this is based at the Health Center in Farmington, Connecticut. So I did just drop the link in the chat, but it provides a unique blend of some service as well as clinical experience, along with some just direct professional development in the form of a series of modules you complete about the social determinants of health. And so just as a heads up, the deadline for the summer program is this coming Friday, the 23rd, and then the application for the fall program isn't until May. But please check it out, see if it's something you're interested in, because many of our students have gotten involved in this and cultivated some great skills as well. In response to a question about is both shadowing and direct patient care experience better or either one, we do recommend cultivating something of a balance between them both. That would be ideal. And I think this is a good point to mention as well that, shadowing in particular has been very, very difficult to obtain over the past year in the pandemic, for many reasons. And it's just really hard to get into those physical clinical settings at the moment for everyone's safety. And so the medical schools and dental schools are aware of this. They're not going to penalize students individually for not being able to have these experiences. But what is important to them is that you are still staying engaged somehow. Perhaps you just shifted your focus to service in the meantime, or you got involved in your local community. And regardless of what you're doing and whether it has that direct connection to medicine or not, you're still cultivating some kind of skills, competencies, which you can ultimately tie back to important skills for a physician or dentist to have. Okay. And so at the bottom of the slide, I do have a link, which, I will drop in the chat too. You will also get it in the link slides later. Just for some crowdsourced ideas to do during the pandemic. So for example, one creative idea that many of our students hit on last summer was becoming a crisis line responder. And it typically took them about 30 hours of training, but that's something you can do right from your bedroom. And you're still cultivating these great communication skills. You're still directly connecting with people as well. Okay. So next, let's dive into research independent scholarship. And I'm going to ask Dr. Sanford to introduce this one, and then I will point out some more UConn specific resources after. So please take it away.
Yeah, so thank you. Together with breadth, depth, and rigor that we talked about earlier, talking through specific coursework, the other academic dimension that schools are very interested in, want to know about, is your interest in research. So if you look at the medical schools and who gets admitted, each class, there is a very high percentage of students that are matriculated in medical school that have done research as part of their undergraduate school activity. There are various ways you can do this. Many students are in an academic program that requires a thesis. So that's one way to fulfill, an interest in pursuing as part of your undergraduate experience, a sort of capstone, project experience that indeed involves a lot of dedicated time, interest, and energy and focus around a particular research question. So as a Research One university, Connecticut sort of is very well positioned to do this. And there are just tons of opportunities available. So depending upon your area of interest and your major, you want to sort of look to who's doing what in your department and get hooked up to, find out maybe other students that are working in that person's lab or activity. And, usually they invite you to go in to sort of get a lay of the land. And if you sort of like what's going on, you get good vibes from it. Often you can sort of work something out there. A typical thesis orientation usually involves about 3 contiguous semesters of work and commitment. And students usually are completing that, in their 3rd and 4th year. Some students even start to get involved with it as early as the sort of 2nd year or even late in the 1st year. Other opportunities involve maybe doing internships and fellowships at different schools and at different hospitals. Often offer these sort of summer fellowships, summer interns that afford you an opportunity to get involved in working on specific projects. So these are things to be thinking about. If you can dedicate a summer to a specific research activity at a certain university or medical center, I mean, that's going to be another very positive positive evidence of your interest and initiative. What does research and your interest there tell schools? One, they come away with a sense that you're a very curious person, that you have a lot of initiative, that you have a lot of follow through and perseverance, and touches on many of the competency areas that get covered when they go through their entire list of competencies. So it's you have to make a decision. Is this something that you feel is important for your undergraduate experience or not, to have a kind of capstone project, or at least some focused time and effort through a summer, or an independent study, that goes for a couple of semesters, to be able to demonstrate, this interest and initiative and follow through on your part. So it's something that we encourage you to do. And, we often get asked the question, does it matter what kind of research you do? So, in general, I think you want to do what you're most interested in. And certainly projects that involve working in a science laboratory, are going to certainly count. There are a lot of students that do more clinically oriented projects where you're looking at the efficacy of different treatment modalities related to treatment of particular illness or disease states, and it brings you in more contact with patients directly rather than to be a wet lab bench experience. So all of these count. We also do have students that, maybe they're English majors, or maybe they're history majors, or women, gender majors, whatever it might be. You might have a specific interest in doing projects related to that particular major you're in. Schools are sometimes a little finicky. They do like to see some, science research orientation as part of the research requirement, but it's not really true for all schools. So it's another one of those things as you move along, you have to sort of get a little sense of where you're interested in and start looking at individual schools to see whether they're going to emphasize one thing or another. But this whole notion of, what is my undergraduate experience for? What do I want to accomplish during this period of time? What do I want to be able to show and demonstrate through my experience? Is this sort of conceptual way to think about it, and to be able to show and have evidence of a formalized individual, study program, whether, again, that's an independent study, or whether that's a more sort of formal thesis activity or a concentrated summer fellowship program. These are different ways to move ahead, to be able to give evidence of that competence. Krista?
And with that, I'm going to now share my screen, if I can, and just point out some resources that our sister unit, the Office of Undergraduate Research, otherwise known as OUR, offers, because they're really the best jumping board starting off place here. So their whole mission is to help you students of any UConn campus, any major, really explore what your research interests might be, seek out and make connections with faculty, and then also they provide a lot of funding opportunities for these different programs. So I just want to point out a couple of resources on their website, beginning with the fact that every semester they offer perfect sessions called Getting Started in Undergraduate Research. So if this is something you're interested in getting involved in the near future, maybe beginning in the fall, please attend one of these. They do have a couple of their handouts at the bottom of the page, as well as a very comprehensive Getting Started guide right on their website as well. In fact, they even have sample email templates that you can refer to when sending an email to a faculty you might be interested in working with. They also provide all these different funding opportunities for students engaged in research. And I really do encourage you to check them out, see if any of them would apply to you. Ones that pre-med Dent students especially tend to make use of include the SURF grants. This would pay you up to $4,000 to do research at any of the UConn campuses over the summer full-time. And so just by scrolling some of these past examples, you can get a good sense of the diversity in terms of projects that students have pursued. And I would also mention the Health Research Program. This is a few years old now, and it's another partnership that we have with the UConn Health Center in Farmington, Connecticut. And this program also basically allows you to do full-time research there, typically beginning in the summer. And then the hope is that you'll continue that research in kind of a reduced capacity throughout the academic year as well. So very cool opportunity as a current undergraduate student to be working with faculty at the Health Center. And so you can see what some of the, or actually this upcoming summer's, the individual positions are by going to this website. And just be aware that the deadline for each summer is typically around the first week of February. So it has unfortunately already passed for this upcoming summer, but you just keep it on your radar for next year if that's something you're interested in. Lastly, I would just mention that OUR, their biggest event of the year is called Frontiers in Undergraduate Research. It's a great big poster exhibition that any undergraduate involved in any kind of research can sign up for to really present their research to the overall university community, staff, students, faculty, even just town people. And so one really great way to check out what some other students have been engaged in is to look at the programs from past events and then just scroll through it and you can get a really good sense of, okay, what a student, first of all, what their major area is, but then, okay, what is their project, their description, and who their faculty mentors are. Because if you keep seeing the same projects that look interesting and you keep seeing the same names of faculty members, maybe just make a note of that and then check out their profile, their website, their CV, and see if there's someone you might be interested in working with. Try to strike up that conversation. Okay, so again, that's Frontiers in Undergraduate Research. Okay. Lastly, just to touch now on extracurriculars and service in general, because as Dr. Sanford mentioned, we often say medical dental schools are interested in interesting people. They're looking for exciting people. And so they do want to know what your passions as a person are as well. And so at UConn, at this point, there's over 700 student organizations. A good chunk of them, over 40 at my last check, are related to healthcare in some form. But it's important for you to pursue things that are just meaningful to you. And I think this is where the idea of quality over quantity becomes very important as well, because the professional schools do tend to value those activities that you've really dedicated yourself to on a regular basis, ideally over an extended time, more so than, saying that you're part of 10 different groups, but you might only do them once or twice per year. That just doesn't have the same depth of meaning attached. Okay, and so I do want to just highlight a few of these. Okay, these are some reasons you might join a student organization. Oftentimes they do provide that kind of networking opportunities with guest speakers, professionals in the field, along with meeting some of your peers engaged in similar things, similar interests, as well as providing some great forums for leadership opportunities down the road. And so on this slide, we have listed some of the main medical related organizations at the Storrs campus. The three really big ones, the springboard organizations, are the Pre-Med Society, Pre-Dent Society, Pre-Physician Assistant Patient Care Alliance. And they're really great starting places as you begin to explore your interests. And then depending on what those are, you might reach out to more niche organizations with a more targeted objective or focus. Some of the other really active ones at Storrs include MAPS, the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. In fact, we're doing our Chat with Alumni series in collaboration with them tomorrow night. They've had some fantastic programming this past year. KDSAP, the Kidney Disease Screening and Awareness Program, do a lot of community initiatives, typically community screenings as well. UConn Rescue is for current or aspiring EMTs. Global Brigades, MedLife often offer international service trips with a bit of a clinical component, and so on, so on. So the sky is really the limit here, and I just want to direct your attention to the photo in the upper right, because this is one example of some students who are now about to graduate, but who as sophomores approached us and said they wanted to create their own club, combining their interests in medicine with knitting. So they formed a new club called Knit for NICU. And at this point, they've grown this endeavor into having partnerships with 3 local hospitals, and they drop off regular shipments of little beanies and blankets and toys that they've knitted for the premature babies. And so, just goes to show that if UConn doesn't have something you're currently interested in, you might as well just make your own group as well. I also do want to highlight some of the orgs at the regional campuses, which I'm personally aware do have a good number of pre-health professional students. So at Avery Point, for example, the pre-health club. At Hartford, there's a couple different groups. And then at Stanford, I've actually spoken to the biology club. And Waterbury has their own chapter of the Collegiate Health Service Corps as well. Okay, so please check those out if you are at one of the regionals too, and you can probably find lots of pre-health professional students. Okay, and I did just want to mention one last thing. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, community outreach. If you're not aware, community outreach is the branch, the department at UConn in charge of all kinds of service opportunities. So they offer one-time events, they offer semester-long programs, they offer alternative breaks over fall and spring breaks. And so these are really great opportunities if you do want to really cultivate your service background, to become involved, especially on a regular basis. And they do have a variety of semester-long programs that are focused on the health professions. For example, they have a program at the local Wyndham Hospital where you can volunteer there. They have a couple connections with the Mansfield Center for Nursing and Rehabilitation and the Collegiate Health Service Corps, which works with a lot of underserved populations in the area. So if that's something you're looking to become more involved in, please check out UConn Community Outreach. Again, cultivating any kind of service is important, which we're going to touch on actually right after this. And if there's something that is more focused on, working directly with kids or adolescents or tutoring, that kind of thing, those are all very important too, and will contribute towards the development of some great skills that are also applicable to the field of medicine. Okay. So we are in the home stretch now, but Dr. Sanford, would you like to introduce these little things called the core competencies, please? These are going to be the last thing we talk about in terms of holistic admissions today.
Sure, it's probably, I don't know, a decade or more ago that the medical schools got much more involved in trying to be specific about the kinds of skills and abilities, talents that they wanted their applicants and people going into the profession to possess, and to be able to incorporate this into their evaluation of applicants in a way so that they were indeed selecting and matriculating the students that they felt had these core set of experiences and competencies that would help them to be a good professional student, and then a good practitioner as you move into your professional role. So you see just the listing of these that sort of boil down to a lot of individual and social skill development, a lot of personal sort of values and judgment-oriented competencies. Some of them focus on academic competencies related to science, related to living systems, related to social and psychological issues. So it's a combination of a lot of these different competencies across different areas that they feel are what makes are necessary to make folks successful in this area. So there's a lot of reliance on looking at candidates from the perspective of these competencies these days compared to years ago. So as they pick up files to look at for candidates applying to their schools, they're really looking for evidence of these competencies through what activities you've engaged in, through the sort of extent and longevity of your interest in certain things of interest to you that you've demonstrated personal strength and leadership strengths in, that you have great communication skills, both in terms of oral and written communication. So this whole notion of movement toward competencies really started with enumerating that much more clearly at the residency level, which is where this started. And then it sort of trickled back down to the undergraduate medical school years. So it's good just to go through this list, take time to think about and reflect on just your own experience to date and what things you might do to show further strength in these areas. So, what gets a lot of attention these days are things like cultural competency, teamwork experience, resiliency and adaptability, hugely important these days. I'm sorry, there's a jet flying over at the moment, getting drowned out.
It's okay. My dog was snoring a minute ago and it kind of sounded like a jet too.
Okay, so I just wanted to introduce those, ethical responsibilities. Again, it was a good movement for schools to move in this direction of, just trying to get as much evidence for possession of these competencies as possible. It's really what makes the admissions process a more holistic process and not one that just focuses on numerics. And it does incorporate the sort of key academic, personal, social, sort of moral dimensions of choice of career and choice of this career in particular. So go ahead and add, Kristen.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And so I do encourage you, you can Google AAMC 15 core competencies and find, the complete list here along with their descriptions. There's also real life stories of different applicants who have demonstrated these and, specific examples of that. And so as Dr. Sanford mentioned, I would think about these too in terms of why are the medical schools looking for these? So why is teamwork important for a physician? Well, as part of a team of healthcare professionals, you each have your own role to play, but you have to work very collaboratively to provide the most effective care for your patient. And so, just reflecting on how have you demonstrated teamwork? Maybe you are part of a sports club, you play intramural soccer or something. But maybe thinking a little more outside of the box, maybe you're in a research lab and you work with other students, graduate students, postdocs, faculty, and you each have your role to play here. And so we just encourage you to be always, reflecting on these different areas, your progress, how you might provide specific examples of each of them. And it is something that we ask our applicants to reflect on as well in our applicant portfolio. And so the earlier you start doing that, the earlier you start making these connections also between different things you're doing that don't have a direct link to medicine, just the easier it will be for you to draw these parallels in terms of transferable skills. Okay, so that's really what we wanted to introduce these today, and you will see more of them down the road. Okay, now we're really in the home stretch here, but just a couple more loose ends to tie up. So this is just a very sample timeline under the timeline of if you are hoping to begin medical or dental school right after you graduate. So I think the main thing that I just want to relay today is that if you are hoping to begin right after you graduate from UConn, just be aware that means you're applying to medical or dental school the summer after your junior year, which means that you would want all the coursework prereqs and all of these different experiential components we've talked about today to, be cultivated to a certain degree by the end of your junior year. So, that is a fairly quick timeline, and actually it's more common these days for applicants to take a little additional time in the form of a growth year or even more. In fact, the data through the AAMC shows that over 60% of applicants do take that extra time and, just really cultivate their candidacies to the strongest. However, if this is your intended timeline, then, freshman year, we do say be a little bit of a nerd, really focus on academics, making sure you're starting off strong, doing well in your introductory sciences, and just setting yourself up for success. And also outside of the classroom, try to explore, become engaged in some different extracurriculars. Summer after freshman year is a good time to begin focusing on those experiential things if you haven't already. So for example, really begin digging into shadowing maybe, or getting licensed in something, or volunteering at something, or research potentially. Moving into sophomore year, you're continuing to take a lot of your prereqs. If you haven't already, this would be a great time to really commit yourself to even just a couple extracurriculars that you can see yourself doing on a regular basis moving forward. And begin looking into some more leadership type roles as well, if applicable. Summer after sophomore year is a great time to continue cultivating different areas, maybe those that you haven't addressed yet. Because moving into junior year, you're likely wrapping up your core prereqs, as well as beginning to think about the application process. So as I mentioned before, we do work very closely with applicants. So typically as early as the spring of their junior year, right before they're beginning to apply. And this is also when you're beginning to think about letters of rec, the MCAT or DAT, and so on. And so the applications do open in the early summer for both medical and dental school, typically open around May. And because the schools operate on a rolling admissions basis, it is to your benefit to get your materials in early. And so, more on that when you're closer to the time. And then really you're submitting your primary application, your secondary applications a little bit later in the summer, collecting your letters of rec, taking your standardized test, with the goal of submitting everything by the end of the summer. And then your senior year, you're really waiting to hear back from schools, maybe providing any supplementary information and/or interviewing. So if you're already planning to take a little extra time, build that growth year or two in, you just shift this process off to the spring of your senior year instead or after. Again, we do work with alumni on a very regular basis, I would say daily, in fact, so you can always reach back out to us down the road, both for general advising and to kick off this applicant process. This slide does note, this is kind of an official timeline through the AAMC, a little more detailed. The links will be in the slides as well here when I upload them to the website, hopefully later this afternoon, if not tomorrow. Including a link to explorehealthcareers.org, because it is really important to explore some of the different areas out there that maybe you've never heard of, maybe just never considered, to see which is the best fit for you. And last thing I just want to say today before passing it back to Dr. Sanford, do you want to just make sure you're aware of some of the UConn resources here to support you? So the Q Center does offer free tutoring in a lot of the STEM areas, including Gen Chem, bio, calculus. The W Center similarly for any kinds of written materials, and they will do personal statement review as well. The CCD, the Center for Career Development, we partner with them for a couple things, including personal statement workshops, interviewing workshops. They offer everything from walk-in resume critiques to mock interviews to also personal statement review. A lot of students don't realize. So, please make use of their resources, set up a time to speak with one of their advisors. And then finally, the Academic Achievement Center, which is there to help you if you just find yourself having a rough semester or a hard time adjusting to college, and you'd like a little insight or peer support, identifying some test-taking strategies or time management skills, study skills, that kind of thing. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in today. Dr. Sanford, could I ask you to provide some closing remarks, please?
So a lot of information presented here today, give you a sense of who we are and what we are there to do and what makes our life full in trying to meet your needs. So as just a closing comment, I just usually emphasize that, take some time to reflect on what you hope to achieve as part of your undergraduate experience at the school. There are just so many opportunities and so many offerings, so many ways to invest your time and energy. We just want you to be sort of deliberate and thoughtful about this. And it's not just, making a checklist of all the things that you need to do to then be a good applicant to medical school or dental school. And you're doing it because this is your path, to your own personal fulfillment, that we hope involves, service to other people in its core. And it's about your own development. It's about your own initiative. It's about your own sort of development of your unique personal strengths that will follow you as you continue to make contributions for the rest of your life. So we just ask you to be thoughtful, and reflective about this as you move through. And it changes over time. It's a moving target. So we're here, I guess, to sort of help out with at least putting the target up there and sort of helping you navigate, through finding pathways that are in line with your own particular interests and talents. So I think we'll leave it at that, Krista.
Wonderful. I will stick around too if anyone has a few last minute questions, but otherwise, best wishes on the last 2 weeks of class and finals. And please get out there, enjoy the sunshine and some of those beautiful blossoming trees right now. Thank you.
Yeah, we can't wait to see you all in person again.